Welcome to Housing Developments.
I'm Jim Tobin.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
And we are joined today by our special guest, Lake Colson.
Good to be here.
Head of Government Affairs. Yeah, thanks for
welcome,
being
man.
here. Yeah, that's right.
So that means we have political news.
That's right. That's right. What's going on? I don't
Right?
know. I just crawled out of a rock or under a rock.
Right. First of all, our sponsor, let's give a shout out to LG Pro Builder.
Yeah, let's build a good life together. Thanks for their support of the podcast.
That's
so
right.
we're happy to have them.
A couple of new swag. Got the helmet.
Nice.
We got some other things that we will be showing off in the next couple of weeks. But thank you very much for being a sponsor.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Okay. No offense, Lake. We're going to talk a little bit very quickly about the economy real quick, and then we'll pivot on to the good stuff. Because we've got new home sales that came out today.
New home sales came out.
Exactly as we thought.
Right.
Mimicking both starts and HMI down 0.6, something like that.
Right.
I think the big news is that what we're hearing is refinancing is moving forward because of the mortgage rates. Right. But buyers are still kind of on the sideline because I think they feel like maybe we'll go down just a little bit more, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm clearly not surprised that that's the case. More importantly, that all the indexes for this month have going to echo a slight drop, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we're there. I think before I came down here, the bond market looked like bonds have fallen. The 10-year Treasury, which is obviously the benchmark for the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, is down. So that's a good. So I kind of foretelling perhaps a further drop in mortgage rates. Glad to see refis are back. That's good news for people who perhaps got stuck in those higher rates because they had to move over the last year or so. But really kind of starting to really put some more wind in the sails of maybe we're going to see those rate cuts come sooner rather than later, and maybe more than one. Yeah,
and Fannie Mae announced, I think it was yesterday, that they are now predicting as well, just like Rob Dietz, Dr. Rob Dietz has mentioned two rate cuts this year. So I think what we're seeing, as you just said, is that bond market anticipating those two, and everything is moving accordingly.
Yeah. Well, so the next inflation numbers come out another couple of weeks, right? Right in front at the head of August. So we'll see what they do. Which is interesting because if it's two rate cuts, that means one of them has to come before the election. And in my mind, does Chairman Powell actually give? In this case, Kamala Harris. Oh, did I just spoil the other half of our? Yeah, sorry. Do they give this administration a little kick and hey, pat on your back, congratulations, your policies work, the economy is improving in time? I'd be really curious if it's hard not to be Jay Powell and not think of the politics of the moment, but by the same token, his job is inflation, and his job is job creation, and his job is the economy.
And the seemingly Wall Street believes that it's going to happen because they're factoring that in, obviously.
Yeah, interesting.
All right. So that was basically the big news.
How do you like that Segu?
Yeah, there we go. Segu. Let's talk to Lake Colson, our chief lobbyist. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Fresh back from the Republican National Convention. Yeah. Congratulations on a really successful showing of the NHB flag. You had Carl Harris and you had Buddy Hughes out with you, as well as Scott Meyer and Meredith Wimbrow of the team. Talk about how the RNC was.
It was a great week, Jim. We had lots of opportunities to talk housing, and we put Carl and Buddy in front of a lot of federal electeds. They had an opportunity to attend a very special closing session with the former president and his vice presidential candidate. And just it was an opportunity for them again to talk housing and the issues that are before our industry.
And it's a different way. I mean, usually you're up on the hill and you're having formal meetings. This has a different vibe, right? Their guard is down a little bit, right? So you really kind of get into the weeds with these guys, right? It's more of a one-on-one personal.
A little bit.
Right?
There was some really good exchanges. Carl spent some time with the majority whip, Tom Emmer. And we with the leaders, Steve Scalise as well. So we had a really good opportunity to just talk about our place in the world and why housing is so important to the economy. And some of the things that are keeping our builders up at night.
Were they receptive?
They were. They liked hearing and building the American dream. They really appreciate hearing the issues that are before our industry.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it goes with, we get political on the podcast, of course, but it goes with the theme, right? Of, President Trump's theme, right? Making America great again, right? Every speaker, at least when I was watching the convention, talked about housing. They talked about high housing prices, obviously as trying to use it as a club against the Biden administration. Sure. But nonetheless, people are talking about housing, and that's really valuable that you were there.
I agree. Yeah. Well, I have to put a shout out for David Bellman, of course, who found Make Housing Affordable Again. He was carrying signs throughout the convention from Milwaukee, a builder, one of our emerging leaders. But we connected with him and with some of the Wisconsin members as well. And so it was a great week.
What was your give us your favorite highlight?
The favorite highlight, I'm thinking certainly the speeches were great. I think there was a lot of energy. There were a lot of really good moments. I think if I was answering this question for Carl, it was the opportunity to visit with the former president,
right,
and the vice president candidate,
right.
My favorite moment. I also, for speaking for Carl, I think he had an opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the Kansas GOP,
right,
and introduced Mike Pompeo,
right,
at a special event. I think
awesome.
that was the fact that we were able to facilitate that. That was my highlight.
Yeah, it's a great get. Absolutely.
Yeah, and no one really asked me, and I've been to many of these, like I've done several of them together over the years. But I'm going to my highlight.
I was going to tee it up, but go ahead.
Yeah, look, it was the one moment where I saw President Trump smile, and I got to tell you, my kids were thrilled that I got this one opportunity. Yeah. But that was when Hulk Hogan came out ahead of the president's speech. And if those of you are watching online, you can see the little Hulkster down here. And you're listening. Look at our little Hulk. I grew up in Connecticut, right up the road from Stamford, Connecticut, the head of the WWF at that time when I was a kid. And the greatest name in sports entertainment is Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And I thought his speech was fantastic. It was vintage 1984 Hulk. You talked about, he ripped his shirt off. He had the whole Fu Manchu working, and when he echoed the most famous words in sports, "What you gonna do?" Right? I was just thrilled, and that was a highlight for me.
Chills, right? Chills.
Everybody else. It's fine. It's all political, blah, blah, blah. It was the Hulk was the highlight of the
That was the
convention.
highlight.
Hulk was pretty good. I refer to him Thunderlips.
Thunderlips, yeah, that's right.
But anyway, so yeah, that's great. That's your highlight.
What you gonna do?
No, I can hear you
it was
it.
awesome. Oh my God.
Okay, so but frighteningly, like there was very little bump, right? The news cycle kind of got eaten up pretty much right away, right?
If you're going to step on a convention, there's pretty no better way to do it.
That's right. Because the convention ended on Friday, and
Thursday night.
Thursday night, you guys started coming back on Friday, and then by Sunday there was an official announcement that President Biden was going to be stepping aside.
Yeah. That's right.
Crazy, right?
Crazy. But a lot happened over the weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, we started hearing more and more, like Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, everybody started coalescing on the idea of like, hey, it's time to go. I'm sure Biden started talking to his family. He was still quarantined, in Delaware.
Right.
Okay. So you guys are the two political experts here. Where does that put us? Both historically, and I mean, because all of a sudden it seems like the Republicans who are flying way high,
right?
They're showing a little concern.
Yeah. And
the Democrats, who for a while were like almost DOA,
right?
They're now re-energized, right?
Signs of life,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here?
I'll go first. Fine. So it's fascinating. So I don't know if I ever really truly bought this idea that they were going to go through this mini primary ahead of Chicago, to try to. And I think it would have been good for Kamala Harris to somehow look like she earned it rather than a coronation. There's a little. At the end of the day, I don't think that matters. We've talked about this on the podcast in the past. Yeah. I don't see any way they were going to go around her. I just don't buy that she was always going to be the candidate. And so, but how fast they coalesce around her, again, not surprising. This is a party thirsty to look united. Because remember, for the last 4 weeks,
bad.
All the press has been Dems in crisis, right? Where the Republicans are energized, they're united, blah blah blah. So they needed to do this for the party because come November, no one's going to remember how this all happened. They're going to remember that she's the nominee, of course.
Right.
And it's been interesting. There's a bump, right? Her first speech was yesterday. Everybody's praising her speech, and she's going to be more energetic against Trump and defending the record. I get all that. But the hard work now begins, right?
Sure.
This is the honeymoon phase. It's going to be short. And we're already watching the Trump administration start to define her. And I'm really curious how she performs as a candidate. Remember, she obviously is a successful politician over her career.
Sure.
She was not a very good presidential candidate in the primaries for 2020. And she's been the vice president, so she's going to have to run on his record. Right. And she's had a rough couple 3 years here as vice president. There's just been a lot of digs at her. So whether unfairly or fairly in some instances, but Lake, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I was also surprised with how quickly things just went from, I saw the president's statement that he was not going to seek re-election. And then all of a sudden, where is Kamala in the announcement? And then came the Twitter post a few minutes later, the second one. And I kept looking at the first, like, why isn't she named? And then we go from that day where it almost seemed like it was the Clintons against the Obamas, because the Clintons were all in immediately. And former President Obama was, well, we need to kind of consider, we need to have an open nomination process. And over the course of about 48 hours into where we are today, essentially everyone has gotten behind all the candidates that you would think.
The delegates.
The super delegates. Everyone has come forward and pretty much, I think it's a done deal. Everything that was supposed to play out over the convention, it's done.
It's done. Do you guys think he issued two different statements because one, he knew that the first one was going to be a very historical document, and it was almost like a clean version of what he's doing for the country and why he's stepping down, and he didn't want to get political. And
I absolutely believe that. I absolutely.
And I think if it had gone the other way, where his statements, I'm stepping down and I endorse, you would, that's blurring the lines of the importance of the moment.
Right.
I mean, he was 68 when LBJ stepped down under different circumstances, certainly at a different time. I mean, LBJ had barely won the New Hampshire primary, and I think the party leaders came to, the party was kind of tearing itself apart. As far as the Vietnam War, a much different dynamic now. It's just really interesting. Anyway, the sitting president, it was a bad night. We all know this. We've talked about it. Everybody's talked about it ad nauseum, but they just threw out the sitting president of the United States from re-election over a bad debate performance. Like that is, if you think about that, it's stunning, which it either says to me that, that they weren't happy with him anyway. And this was just an opportunity to throw him out, or they really think there's something wrong, and that's why we see some of these calls from the right to that the president should step down from the presidency immediately. That there really are issues underpinning this decision. It's a really strange, and nobody has a really good answer for what it is, because Obama had a bad debate night. George W. Bush had bad debate nights. I mean, you just have them. But
this is more of a lack of faith of even just him being able to cross the finish line, right? Because
this goes to
him being able to lead.
I mean, but he was on Stephanopoulos. I mean, he did the shows, and it didn't get any better.
No, it didn't get any better. Which I think they had just decided, right? They didn't give him the benefit to dig himself out of the bad performance. They just, it was over the side, and no matter what he did, they were never going to allow him back up off the mat. And I think that's interesting. And so, I made this observation, Paul, to you on the night of the announcement by President Biden. But think about this moment. For the last 8 years, before he was past President Trump and he was Citizen Trump, President Trump is dictated what the Republican Party has become. It is now his party, the party that I grew up with. I'm a child of Reagan, so to speak. The party of George W. Bush, it's gone, and for better or for worse. I'm not making an opinion, but this is Trump's GOP now, and over 8 years it has been remade in his likeness. Trump is now, because of the Democrats' fear of a second term, Trump has dictated who the nominee is, and I guess I should say maybe not who Kamala Harris is, but who Joe Biden is no longer the nominee. Donald Trump drove the party to change its horse mid-race.
Right.
And it wasn't because Donald Trump's debate performance was so good.
No.
Right. But this overarching fear of a second Trump term Trump has dictated who the nominee is going to be for the Democratic Party now.
Yeah.
I don't think that's being said enough. And whether you give him credit or not, it's a weird thing to take credit for, but I think we have to acknowledge that Trump is the driving force behind this election, period.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, and the big issue, though, is the timing, right? I mean, it's now such a compressed time slot.
Right.
Harris has to, you said this earlier, she has to, I mean, right now the Republicans are defining who she is. She needs to start identifying who she is independently before that's lost. Right. Does that work? I mean, because like you said, there's a lot of baggage there to kind of unload and then reconstruct in the image. That's a question for both of you, right?
I think Jim said it already. She has President Biden's record that she's going to run on. Outside of that, she hasn't been very visible. She hasn't been very vocal for a number of years, and so yeah, she's going to have to really define herself between now and November.
Yeah, President Biden was losing to Trump in January and February, March and April and May before we got to the debate in June. Maybe losing by 2 or 3 points, but he's still losing by 2 or 3 points in all the battlegrounds, and even on the national polling numbers. He's losing on his policies. Now, some people thought he was too old to do the job, but that wasn't the driving factor until it was exposed in the debate.
Right.
His policies are unpopular, whether it's the border, whether it's crime, abortion, whatever it is. They were losing on the agenda as well. Now the real thing, can Kamala Harris reverse that? I think in my hot take is that she makes the race closer.
Yeah.
But I'm still not sold that she can win it outright.
Yeah.
Even though I still think it's still a 50-50 toss up. Sorry, that was a weird way to.
No, it's fine.
Does she bring the youth vote out more than I don't think the youth vote originally was going to turn out for President Biden.
Right.
And I sense that there's enthusiasm on the Democratic side that they will indeed turn out. Well, and I don't think you had that a few weeks ago.
But does Trump's success in increasing his percentages of the black vote, the Hispanic vote, the Asian vote, right? We know those numbers are way up. Does she temper some of those and bring them back more to historical levels? Or do you think that those people are like, Trump's my guy this time around?
I think she does. I think she will. Those categories that you mentioned were always going to be, for the Democrat. And I think President Trump definitely had narrowed the gap. And yeah, I do think for the youth, I think the black, the Hispanic, I do think, at least with the black and the youth, I do think she will expand that lead. Right. The Hispanic vote, I'm not so sure about. I'm curious how, because I think that those are the trend already was moving toward the former President Trump.
Right.
So I'm not sure about that demo yet.
Yeah. But right now Trump is considered the Twitter president, and Kamala is considered the TikTok nominee. So,
we'll see. I mean, it's interesting. As we predicted, she certainly didn't have enough money to run. We saw the record fundraising haul, but that's not really surprising.
So explain that to the audience. Like how is it so that she can easily move all the money that was in Biden's coffers over into hers?
Because her name's on the filing.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Trump challenged it at the FEC. I saw that yesterday. I think Trump's filed a complaint. It's just more I think mechanically they can do exactly what they're doing.
Sure.
But I think, Trump's move is just to highlight the fact that, wait a minute, this campaign finance is still a dirty word for a lot of people. So why not make it seem a little bit crazy?
Do you think had Biden announced this before the RNC that they would still have gone with JD Vance as his vice president nominee?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would think that President Biden's announcement before the RNC would have played in. I really don't. I'm not, I could be convinced otherwise, but I don't
Because you're
believe
hearing
it.
that,
Yeah.
he's definitely more on the Trump side, and basically they felt, let's kind of run up the game here and add somebody who is more in line as opposed to a safer, more moderate kind of, a Nikki Haley, right? I think.
Well,
Nikki,
she was never going to get she.
But someone like that, like a little bit more.
Nah, Trump's going to want to serve with somebody who's more like him than either a potential threat or somebody he just doesn't get along with. I just don't buy that strange bedfellows piece. I don't know how well he and Mike Pence got along. They're two generally different people.
Yeah.
Where JD Vance is definitely more in the Trump mold.
Which is outrageous given JD Vance's stance even a couple years ago.
Right. And younger, I think he makes Trump look a little bit younger.
Loyalty. I think loyalty is the most important characteristic of this former President Trump wants JD, because he's going to be loyal to him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And he will. I think JD Vance is now going to force Kamala Harris to pick somebody from that certainly not conservative like JD Vance, but from that part of the country, that kind of Pennsylvania, working class, so that's what I think. I think JD Vance is going to dictate who she picks more than she would have dictated who Trump picked. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think I said that right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start that conversation, because that's the next phase of this is who are the front runners and who, I don't know if we want to lay odds as to who she actually picks, but I mean, you mentioned it, right?
Shapiro
from Pennsylvania, right?
I agree.
Kentucky, I mean,
good candidate.
But Kentucky's not going to go for Kentucky. Trump's going to win Kentucky by 25 points, right? So I don't know if he brings anything other than he can talk the coal belt, but he's going to have to defend the president's record. Like, let's remember, she's going to have to defend President Biden's record. Biden's not off the ticket yet, so to speak. He's off the ticket, but he's still going to have to run on his policies, and he's still trying to do things now between now and the election. Is he just going to sit back and do nothing? I mean, he needs to advance his policies. He's got regulations that are scheduled to come out. That the administration needs to continue to do its work.
Sure.
I think Pennsylvania is very much in play if Shapiro gets on the ticket. Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan said she's not. She said not. So I just
Roy Cooper from North Carolina.
Yeah,
is that
and he's out, right? He's done his 2 terms.
Yeah.
I don't think North Carolina's in the mix. I don't think you can put Roy Cooper on the ticket all you want. I just don't. I think North Carolina looks more like Michigan and Ohio as a swing state than it does Virginia. Sorry, wrong way.
Yeah.
But
Mark Kelly, he's the other one that's considered a front runner.
Interesting pick. Popular
Arizona, swing state-ish.
Yeah, it's always cool to have an astronaut. We've talked about that.
Right.
He's certainly likable,
right?
but
popular.
But I don't know if the VP pick brings votes. Sorry, I'm totally down.
No, I don't. That's where I was going to go.
LBJ was the last one that actually moved the needle for Kennedy,
Texas,
right? But
barely.
Barely, right? And so I don't know. I don't know if Mark Kelly brings Arizona. I think Arizona is going to go back to where it was.
Red.
Yeah, I do. Trump's up pretty consistently there.
So you're saying even with she takes Kelly, there's an open seat they would have to fill if Kelly comes.
Right, but they have a Democratic governor.
Okay,
so yeah, it's a net gain for.
Right. So Ohio, you do have a Republican governor. You would have to fill JD's seat for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So it just falls down to chemistry, like whatever feels right.
Yeah, I think there's certainly chemistry, but I think for the Democrats, they're behind in all the swings, right? So I saw a piece yesterday. If there's a theory that Trump has already locked up Arizona and Georgia, maybe even Nevada, which would be big. That hasn't gone Republican probably since the Obama term. Since probably Bush. It's been a long time since. But if Trump can take those 3 states, he only needs one of the blue wall, the Great Lakes states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. If Nevada comes back off the board and goes for Kamala Harris, then he's got to win 2. The path for Trump is a lot easier than Kamala Harris. It was for Biden too, and I think we have to remember that. So they need to put Pennsylvania back on the map, because now the guy who's purportedly from Scranton, you know my theory on Joe Biden from Scranton. Right. He's lived in Delaware more than he lived in Scranton at this point. They've lost that kind of hometown son. Yeah. And can Kamala Harris convert it without Shapiro? I think Shapiro is the leader in the clubhouse.
Interesting,
but.
I do too. I think the same,
but we'll probably be wrong.
All right. So aside from the vice president's picks between now and the DNC, which again will be
Lake, you're heading there again, right?
3 weeks.
Yeah,
right. In 3 weeks.
Hard to believe.
With our chair and
Chicago
vice chair. Again.
That's right. What are we supposed to look at? Like what are we focusing on?
What are we focusing on? Our message has been the same. We're pro housing. We are, the House just announced today that they were giving next week back. So only the Senate will be in next week. And it's the August recess.
Right.
So there's not a lot of congressional activity. The game right now is on appropriations.
Right.
And the Republicans did not have enough votes on the energy and water bill. That was pulled. The interior bill, they tried to do that. That was pulled.
Yeah.
So what we see is a quiet August and coming back in September and doing perhaps in the second or third week a continuing resolution to keep the government funded that could go through the election. And who knows whether that's November, December, it could go into January. And after that, I don't see a lot of activity happening in Congress during the lame duck and even when they come back in September.
Given the lightness of the calendar, does Trump debate Kamala?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, why not?
We'll have one debate.
Yeah, I think they stick with one. Yeah, I think so. I think he Trump's style aside, right? That's always what drives me crazy. Trump's style aside, he's got enough things to really go after this administration. I remember, President Biden put Kamala Harris in charge of the border. Yeah, and that's where the conversation ends. Right, hard stop, right? I mean, just all you have to do is say that through the entire hour and a half debate, the border, the border. And so I think she's, she can go after him on abortion and a lot of things, but he's already tried to mitigate that by talking about, he's not going to go for a nationwide ban. So anyway, I think he does debate her, and Trump's not going to back down. He's win, lose or draw. He's not going to look like he's going to back down from a fight.
You got to think there's going to be one debate. I think the public is. I would be very excited to see a debate between those two.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think the Democrats are going to want 3, like the traditional 3, and that run up to the election we normally do. He's not going to give them to her, no. and JD Vance and the candidate to be named later will have one debate, and that's it. And hopefully, I don't know when they do it. I think it's September 10th is kind of before early voting. But remember, early voting, the Republicans have actually started to embrace early voting for the first time. So I think, it's going to be an interesting, what was it? Long Hot Summer was the movie. So, but it's going to be a more interesting fall.
Yeah. Well, to be determined, right?
Yeah,
I guess we'll be figuring out. That's why you guys tune in.
That's
so
right.
We can talk about
Thanks for stopping by, Lake.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's been fun.
That's awesome.
Again, big shout out to our sponsor, LG Pro Builder.
Let's build a good life together. Thank you. Yeah.
I think that's it for the week.
I think that's it. And until next week.
That's right. With that, I'm Paul Lopez.
And I'm Jim Tobin, brother. See you later.
Thank you.